Hi guys, welcome to the first Munny talk. Today I'm joined by Neil, our head of learning, and Colin, our group chairman. And the focus today is the virtual Munny coach we spent the last 12 to 18 months building. And I want to talk to you two about what we've built, from your perspective, from the work that you do. So I'm going to start with Neil, if that's okay. Can you first of all just do a quick introduction to you and some of the work that you do for Munny?
Hi guys, my name's Neil. I'm head of learning at Munny. I've been involved since the beginning with Andy. The kind of main core part of my role is to help create a lot of the material that we will deliver, whether it's via workshops, webinars, one-to-one coaching sessions, whatever the kind of vehicle might be. And I'm part of that kind of delivery process. So for me, it's all about the content, the quality of it, and making sure that we deliver it to the right people in the right way.
Thank you, mate. And then Colin as well, if you could, quick introduction to your role within the business and what you do for us.
Hi, I'm Colin, chairman, group chairman. What do I do? Some people call me the glue or the oil. I just knit things together and just try and keep things on track, and see where we get.
Perfect. You make sure we don't cock this up is how I describe it when I'm talking to people. We've built. So we've built this thing called M. Neil, you're working with our clients on a pretty much a daily basis, delivering educational stuff. What is it that we built in your word? I know none of us are techie on this call. I've got the tech team next week, but what is it we built? What is M?
I think it's just a really useful, relevant pocket expert where people can access it whenever they need to and get the information that they need. I think one thing about Munny is we do a lot of, and obviously very proud of the work that we do. We do a lot of face-to-face work, but you can only get so many people in the workshops, even the webinars. We can have a couple hundred people in a 1 hour webinar, which is great. But some of the firms that we deal with who have thousands and thousands of staff, it's difficult to kind of get time with everybody. Not everyone's getting the access to the kind of material that we deliver. And what we do find is that a lot of the questions that we get asked tend to be fairly similar in nature. It's rare that we'll get anything that's quite specific and a little bit off topic. It tends to be about the same type of issues, whether it's pensions, debt, mortgages. And I think, in order for us to kind of scale out the kind of the right answers or the right type of guidance based on those questions, we can only do that by offering some kind of useful tech, which is what M is. And the people that we can't have those conversations with or don't get access to our workshops for whatever reason, if they have something in their pocket, something that's inside of their iPhone that they can access, whether it's through an app or a web application, something like that, where they can ask the questions directly into that and get the same answers that they would get if they were in one of our workshops or one of our webinars. I think that's a really, really powerful tool. So having that ability to ask questions at any time in any way that they see fit, also in a anonymous, private way, is really, really powerful. And I think the accuracy and the quality of the responses that they're getting, are very safe in nature and are very reflective of the work that we're doing, in the workshops and the webinars.
And so, just on that point as well, is there a particular use case that you've seen where you think, this firm would have really benefited or would really benefit from having M? Like, is there anything you can give us in terms of, again, anonymous, but just an example of a firm that you've worked with that you think that would work well for?
Yeah, definitely. There's a couple, to be fair. I know there was a firm that we've worked with just before Christmas who've got 3 or 4 sites around the UK. They've got, I think, circa 8,000 to 10,000 staff in total. It's a logistics firm. So a lot of the staff that they have, 80% of their staff will be out on the road, driving between locations, won't have a chance to, attend an in-person workshop or a webinar, something like that. So it's very difficult to kind of reach those members of staff. So I know with that particular firm, we've offered them the opportunity to use M, which they are now using. And it gives those people that we perhaps don't catch in the webinars and the workshops the ability to get that still, that kind of financial assistance and guidance via the web application on the phone. So it means that rather than just, a 5 or 10% of that business's workforce getting access to, the guidance, direction, signposting that we offer, it means that we're getting to kind of reach out to everybody on their own terms as well, because a lot of workforces are remote, whether it's working from home or out on the road. It's quite difficult to get them in the room for a webinar. So M allows us to kind of break that barrier down a little bit reach the people that
Yep.
perhaps traditionally wouldn't have, access to a lot of our kind of core material.
Okay, that's good. That's good. And moving on to Colin, you've been involved in quite a lot of discussions now around and you've had lots of the demos that we've done, and you've managed to observe it again in your own words. Again, I know you're not a techie, and none of us are. But what is it? What have we built in your own words?
I think we built a real gap filler. When I think about when you've got staff around you and they're coming to you with their problems, the one you always wanted to avoid was money, any money problems. So a few about a petty cash till the wage day, yeah, fine. But you always sensed when it was the same person continuously, there was a deeper problem. But you're almost scared to death of asking the question because it was private. Even if you asked the question and they gave you the answer, would I have the knowledge or the experience or the right to give an opinion on what they should do? So seeing the examples and the chatter we've had, certainly fills that gap. You think about the practicalities of seminars and webinars. Mm-hmm. If you look at a factory with a sales team, you've got maintenance staff. Not everyone can get to a laptop. Not everyone can attend a seminar. Not everybody wants to talk about the money worries in a room full of 10 other people or 20 other people or even 100 other people. And quite a few would just sit there in silence. I would probably be one of the ones that would just sit there in silence and then try and research it later. Well, give you the chance to go away and research it later. And let's be honest, whenever you're worrying about anything, you're not worrying about it when you're sat at work at your desk because work takes over. It's when you wake up at 2 a.m. and you're lying there just thinking about it, and M's going to be there, so you can deal with it there and then. So to me, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer from a business point of view. And I don't even want to go into the problems that can happen when somebody's at work stressed or distracted by something and their mind's not on the job they're doing, especially manual workers, guys on machinery and all that sort of stuff. But it's even more simple, a guy picking an order. He's not thinking about the order he's picking. He's thinking about, shit, I've got that bill coming at the end of the week. What am I going to do? And again, from what I've seen, just fills that massive gap.
Brilliant. Okay. And then Neil, just going back to when we were testing and piloting, you've got a separate business, a compliance company. You had some staff there that tested for us. They were all from a finance background. Do you want to give us a bit of context onto how that played out and what what their opinions were on M?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a little compliance firm, and I think when it comes to compliance type people, I know you probably had a bit of exposure to them, determined to break something, prove it doesn't work properly, ask a question that you won't know the answer to, like a little feather in the cap for the compliance people. And I think, to be fair, we did robustly test it. We were determined to find issue with it, but that's to make it stronger. That's the whole kind of idea behind it. And to be fair, I think from the onset, it was impressive. It really was impressive. I think early days feedback into what can make even stronger and even better and even more resilient and accurate with its results was a big part of it. But the start point was kind of impressive from the onset. So I know we've spent about a year, 18 months refining the quality of the answers that M can provide, and that's all been done with the backdrop of a lot of compliance people daily, giving it a kick. Asking it, difficult questions, trying to trick it, trying to break it ultimately. And I think we've learned a huge amount during that process as we've gone on. And the end result is a really, really clearly defined, well-structured, thought-out piece of work. And the quality of the answers and the signposting and direction that it gives is quite exceptional. And still surprises me because I'll go in and if I think of something awkward to ask it, I'll jump in and do that. But to be fair, it's never really let me down. I can't think of an instance where I've kind of gone, I don't know about that. So yeah, it's been tested to death, and it will be continued to be tested as well. It's not, it's not a kind of pre-launch process. Regardless if we've got one user or 100,000 users, we'll continue to test it just to make sure that it does exactly what we need it to do.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point there about the regular themes as well that we see when you mentioned earlier on, because obviously when we built it's been built on the back of a lot of the work we've done in person. So it's been built on the back of the coaching, the webinars, the workshops, and taking through the most common themes that we tend to see, and just making sure that we refined that process as much as possible, so that the 80 to 90% of the most commonly asked financial questions that we get posed in the coaching sessions can be answered by in a really consistent way, and delivering the same information, the same quality of guidance that we would look to provide in our sessions. And I think that word I've just used there, guidance, is quite important, because again, I'm going to lean on you, Neil, for a second, just with your compliance background. One of the key aspects of designing and building M has been making sure it doesn't stray into that financial advice arena, because it's very much about guidance and coaching. But can you talk to that a little bit? Can you talk to us a little bit more about what's the difference between guidance, coaching, and advice, for example, and how do we make sure that M doesn't stray into that arena?
I think that's one of the kind of interesting parts of this a little bit, is that people, from the onset, who have questions about it, one of the first questions they ask is about advice. Does it give advice?
Mm-hmm.
No, it does not give advice. It's not equipped to give advice. We don't want it to give advice. We want to lean into the objective nature of the kind of areas that we're looking at. So guidance, signposting, education, anything that's objective in nature is what we will give someone who uses M, such as this is how you go and get this information. These are the considerations you need to make. We've really been careful to train it over a long period of time not to give advice, because that's not our arena.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what we're interested in doing. It's not what we want to do. But as I say, a lot of the compliance work that we do is to try and get it to give us advice. And given the kind of guardrails that are in place now, it just won't do that under no circumstances. It understands the kind of clear difference between the two. Very similar to a lot of the kind of one-to-one coaching sessions that we do. We'll have those sessions with people that have a question about debt, for example, have a question about mortgages, or they might, could be pensions investment. We can give them objective, factual information. But if they want advice, we'll signpost them to go and get that advice from somewhere. So we'll also make it really clear to them the difference between the two. And M does the same. If people are looking for advice, it'll make it really clear that it cannot give advice, and it will signpost where they can actually go and get that advice. So I think that's a really kind of clear distinction, one that we're very aware of. We're fully aware of when we started putting them together, and it's something that we've got a lot of confidence in being able to find the kind of distinction between the two, and it forms part of our regular compliance tests as well. So I think it's important to kind of draw that distinction, because that, I imagine, would be a pretty common question that people would ask when it comes to a virtual money coach that has got AI plugin. Well, is the AI just going to go and give us random advice? No, under no circumstances will it give you advice. It will give you useful, educational, actual information.
Great stuff. No, it's a good point. And I think it's something that we've worked really hard on, and I'll get the tech guys to explain this in much more detail next week, but they're going to talk to us about Prompt Guard, the piece of kit they've built that sits around it, and they'll go into that in much more detail. I think if we tried it, it'd get quite clumsy quite quickly. So
Absolutely.
we will move on, but we're going to keep it focused actually on the reason that we built them. Because I think if we look back 18 months ago, we're all quite new to the world of AI, and we started using ChatGPT. And going to go to Colin now, if that's okay. I know that you've used ChatGPT several times just to help with documentation, help proofread a blog, for example, help get some inspiration for things. And one of the questions that we're going to get asked probably by a number of newer firms that we're talking to right now and trying to onboard is, well, why don't I just use ChatGPT? Is this not just the same thing? And again, without getting too technical and sort of getting into a realm that we're not comfortable, what would you say are the differences between M that we've spent 18 months building and ChatGPT, for example, or other sort of similar models?
Well, I've only used the two, and I find the skill is actually in the setting of your question, of your query. To be quite honest, it's that what's that saying? They say bad info put in, bad info comes back out the other end. So when I'm using chat, I think I actually talk to chat like I'm chatting to a person. So I give real description of what I want, why I want it, how I want it, what nuance I want to put on it, what tone, what context. And I just think you do the same with M. It's the information you have to give it. You can't just say, I owe some money. You've got to say and give a bit of detail. And then M can really reward you with some good guidance and some good, I nearly said the A word then, but some good guidance and some good information. For me, I've loved the fact that it can set out, your letters, the format of it. If you had to write to somebody, I just love the fact it puts in the right points, which makes people will take your letter seriously then.
Yeah.
In terms of, the difference between the two, I'm not technical enough to be able to tell you, but I enjoy using both, to be honest.
I'll try and fill in a couple of the blanks from my very limited technical knowledge, but I think you're right. One of the great tools that we've seen used is that creditor liaison tool, where it helps individuals and empowers them, which is why it's called M. It empowers them to engage with their finances, whether that's in a good way or a negative way. For example, if it's with debt collection, it'll help them engage with those people. And the credit liaison tool that's been built by the tech guys is fantastic in terms of the way it pulls through the relevant chapters from the FCA, the relevant sections and points, and guide people to the certain rules that make sure that whatever they produce and send to a creditor is much more robust than just, I can't pay, can you help? It says why they need help and what the things are, the legislation that should be leaned into by that particular creditor. So yeah, no, I agree, that's a great tool within it. And I think when I speak to the tech team, because we have had that question posed to us, what is the difference between ChatGPT versus M, for example? Ultimately, M is a trained model that is a vector framework, and that 800,000 pieces of data it's ingested is what it leans into most when it comes to giving you responses, giving you answers. Then it has several AI plugins that uses Claude and Gemini and GPT and a few others, and it leans into those as and when it needs to pull information through to produce certain content. But ultimately, what we've got is our own vector framework. That's as far as I'm going to go on the technical side. The tech guys can pick up that next week when they're on this Money Talks. And then just going back to Neil for a second, I know we've talked about an example of a business where they had sort of multi-site operation, people on different shifts, logistics, that type of thing. But do you think it would work for a contact center or somewhere? I think where we used to work, there was 1,000 staff all working in an office, all in different offices, but all working within one sort of arena, all sat in front of a screen. Would that kind of firm benefit from M? And if so, why?
I think if you understand the benefits of what M can do, what can give you, then I think it works for anybody, any individual who wants to use it. So I know we talk about businesses take it on board, but I think there's absolutely no reason why an individual, a person outside of a business can use it. So I think collectively, whether it's through your employer that you have access to this, or whether you just want it yourself, and that will be an initiative I think we're going to be looking at as we get into 2025. It really is the eye of the beholder. If you understand the power of, what this virtual money coach can do, then it can be used by anybody working in any type of business at any point. So, if you have questions about finance, and I think we do, it's the type of stuff that keeps us up at night. And, whether you're in your 40s and 50s and you're thinking about your pension, whether you're in your 20s and when you should be thinking about your pension, you are thinking about your pension, in the car finance, perhaps buying a home. I think depending on the stage of life that you're at, and perhaps the nature of your employment, M will answer those type of questions that will be relevant to you at that point in time. So different people, at different ages, at different stages of their career and different business types will use it for different reasons. And I think the great thing about it is it doesn't really matter, what kind of stage of life you're in, what type of business you work for. It's definitely useful. It's got a whole raft of information about how UK benefit systems work. It's not a benefit calculator as such, but it can give you really useful information to signpost you where you get that from as well. So technically, people who aren't employed would benefit from having a look at M, just to kind of make sure they supplement in their income as best they possibly can. So that's the great thing about it. I think it's why we're so proud of it, passionate about it. Is it can be used by pretty much everybody. And I have dipped in. I do my compliance checks, of course, but I ask questions during those compliance checks I'm interested in as well. Wonder about this, I wonder about that. And it's been fantastic. So I don't think, you have to fit into a certain category if you want to use them. I think it's great for anybody that wants to use it for a variety of reasons, for the range of questions that you could potentially have.
Okay, that's a great little segue into my next question, which is for Colin, which is there is there an age limit? You know, is M easy to use? And I'm not being ageist, but I think you may be our most senior member of Munny. Is there is there, you know, is it easy to use for anybody? You know, from a non-techie background, a techie background. You know, what we thought about that, the usability of it.
It's just easy. It's just, if you can use a phone, and who can't use a phone?
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not checked out if I do a misspelling or a mistype or a typo, whether it'll pick that up. But I've used it with a few friends, and so I've used it for a guy talking about his pensions.
Okay.
I've used it, about Richard, trying to make him understand that a bit extra on the mortgage, how many years it brings it down by, and what that saving is. And whoever I've shown it to, they've not been able to believe how straightforward it was and how on the money the guidance was, or the answer was. So it's I can't see anybody who couldn't use it. I suppose as you get older, you think you know all the answers, perhaps, and you might. A lot of the noise I hear is too late, and I don't know when too late is, but it's too late, and it is never too late. Youngsters, I think it'll be second nature to them to use it. Why not? You're not going to ask. Would you go and ask your dad, or ask him? I'll ask him. Every day.
No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things we're working on now is can we make this really kind of fit for purpose for that, let's call it 11 to 18 category, that secondary school, college sort of category. Because I think that would be a fantastic demographic of people to get M in front of. We already work with schools, as people will know. We do lots of work with academies and various other educational outlets. And I think if we can tap into that world and give them something like M, I think what a great tool that would be for people at college, for example, just setting out on that first financial adventure of having a job, having income, having their own costs, having their own debit card, all that type of stuff. I think it'd be fantastic. And then I guess a final question for you, Neil, in terms of some of the coaching that you've done and the various other work that you've done will have had themes running through it. But is there a particular example that you think that would have been a perfect use of them? Is there a particular coaching session you've done, or a conversation with someone where you think, God, if they just had him, that would have been so much easier for that individual to do that from the company?
I think two of the main areas, or two the kind of main topics that we deal with regularly that I think M will be perfect for, I think, like pensions and debt. Debt definitely, because people don't like talking about it. It's a massively taboo subject. We're coping with the cost of living crisis, and people are struggling, and they don't like to admit that. So when we're doing webinars and we're doing kind of workshops, we get to the debt section. You can tell people are listening and it resonates. But they don't want to ask questions. They don't want, they feel a little bit embarrassed to kind of talk around these areas. So a lot of the emails that you get outside of the sessions tends to be around debt, how it works, what happened, steps they can potentially take. So you mentioned before about how really great credit liaison tool. If you were worried about debt, you weren't sure where to look, or techniques to maybe clear your debt, or you need to write a letter to a creditor, buy yourself some time. M is fantastic at those. It will give you direction on what you can and can't do, or signpost debt charities that you can potentially speak to. As you said before, it can draft letters to creditors on your behalf based on what your situation is. So I think for people who don't want to talk about certain issues, debt being a main one, M is an absolutely fantastic tool for that, because it's anonymous and it will give you that guidance that you'll need and might not want to have a conversation about. Also pensions as well. I think we are starting to get more and more questions about that. We are getting a lot of requests for our financial futures webinars and workshops. And people are wondering, how do they find their old pensions? How do they work with lost pensions? What steps can they take? How does compound interest work? Why is it so important that you don't delay paying into your pension pot? Again, we do get these questions in the workshops. But again, having M there and just being able to punch in some of these questions, give you a really factual, educational based response it's absolutely perfect for that. Like I said before, anything finance related, it's great. But based on the sessions that we do, I often think about debt being one, and of course, pensions and investments being one as well. It doesn't give advice, but it will signpost and give information about the steps that you might want to consider taking.
Okay, no, that's great examples. And I agree. I think pensions is huge. I think there's a huge gap in the UK in terms of people having the right pension provision. And people that are retiring, not retiring enough and having to go back into work. And if we can prevent that as early as possible, then what an amazing thing to do. And then I guess final question over to Colin now then is, I know that you're engaging with some of our existing client base in terms of just asking them for feedback, testimonials, how would the work go last year or this year when we've worked with them, and obviously offering them the opportunity to get a demo of them and different access to different features and products that we have. I know you're talking to a hotel chain currently, quite a few. We won't name them on this particular panel discussion, but can you sort of articulate why that kind of business would find useful? Like what would be some of the great features that would provide a hotel chain, for example?
I think, and it's any business that's multi-sited, multi-locationed, staff working different hours, different programs. The difficulty of it's almost like the difficulty of providing support equally. So you may have worked where you've got that sales versus the office, production versus warehouse and stuff like that. And things like this, when they can't, a team can't attend the seminar, it's almost like viewed negatively that they're not being as well treated as somebody else. Well, just levels that everybody, nobody can argue they can't get the help or support they need. It's there. They can't argue, well, the room was that busy or noisy, I didn't feel I could ask a question. So it just levels the whole playing field. So it's really exciting talking to some of these bigger companies, because without being too cocky, it's almost like a no-brainer. And why you're doing something great in thinking about your team's well-being and financial well-being. It's brilliant that you're trying to do something. Why let it be spoilt by someone thinking it's unfair or unequal, or trust them, they had the seminar when I was on holiday. That's sort of negative mindset that creeps in. But this just takes all of that away. Just issuing it's like issuing anybody a pen. Yeah, here's a pen. Get on with it. So for me, big tool opportunity for these companies to take on board.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's the thing, isn't it? We know we can provide whole of population cover for. We're talking pence per person, in terms of the cost, and we'll get into that in another discussion group. But it's low cost, low barrier to entry, and every single individual, regardless of their location, regardless of what shift they work, can all access something, which then gives everybody the equal access. So yeah, great place to finish. So I think then I want to thank you for your time. We're about half an hour in, which is great. I don't want to take too much of your time up. So thank you for joining us for the first Munny Talks panel discussion. Next week we'll have the tech guys on, and we're going to get much more techie. I'm going to ask them what is it they've actually built and why is it better than ChatGPT, all that kind of stuff. We'll get them to answer those questions for us, and we'll regroup probably in a few weeks, where I'd love to talk more about the one-to-one coaching, the webinars, the workshops, and that side of what we do. Just again to give a different perspective on the work that we do. But thank you very much for your time, chaps. Thanks for joining us, and that is Munny Talks episode 1.